Would you just relax? Hey guys, it's Cal, and welcome back to my channel. And today we have the lovely Spooky Banana with us, who really is not, who's being very shy. Come on, buddy. See? Spooky Banana is my 5-year-old banana ball python, and ball pythons are actually not what we're here to talk about today, and they don't make this list. And I will tell you why at the end of the video, why ball pythons don't make this list. But today we're going to talk about the top 5 best beginner reptiles. Now, first off, I like to say any reptile really can be a beginner. So definitely pick a reptile that you are passionate about. Get the reptile you're most passionate about and do as much research as you can and learn about them, and you should be good to go. But some people, when they are just getting into reptiles, would prefer something easy. Something that's a little bit more foolproof than some of these other ones that requires special humidity and all this stuff that can be confusing for a first-time reptile keeper. So I decided to put together a list of what the top 5 easiest pet reptiles to care for in my experience. And number 1 is crested gecko. Crested geckos are super popular for a good reason. They are adorable. They don't require a lot of space. They can be kept as babies in a 12 by 12 by 18 Exoterra, and then as an adult, 18 by 18 by 24, which is what Eclipse, my crested gecko, is kept in. And they don't require UV lights. They don't require any crazy special lighting. They do pretty good at just room temperature. Spray them down once a day. I usually spray them down at night. Really saturate the enclosure so that it's super like wet. Not like wet, like drowned wet, but like the substrate is super damp. And then kind of let it dry out during the day, because they do need a dry out period. Let it dry out during the day, and that should be good. And then spray again at night. They are super easy to feed, so if you don't want to feed crickets all the time, which I do recommend you still give them crickets occasionally and bugs occasionally, because it's really good enrichment and it is great for them to have some bugs just to swap it up. Like, would you want to eat the same thing every day? No. But you can get Repashy. This is the one I'm using currently. I also use the Pangea crested gecko diet, and my girl really prefers the Pangea. I think every crested gecko I've ever worked with has always preferred the Pangea watermelon flavor over any of the other ones, but the store I usually got my Pangea from closed down recently, so I was out the one day and I just grabbed this at the pet store. It's working fine. She's not complaining, so she's eating, so it's all good. They definitely can like be a little bit jumpy, but with handling they can be really good as long as you handle them often and they are used to being handled. They can actually be very tameable and get used to handling. They can drop their tail, which is a common theme for most geckos, is they can drop their tail and it does not grow back. So you would definitely want to not grab your gecko by its tail or pull on it or anything like that. Like, nothing, like, once it loses its tail, it's gone. Personally, I think it's cute. I think when they do lose their tail, it's somehow cuter. Like, I love the little frog butt look. I had a elderly crested gecko named Equinox, who I will put a picture up of. And he was a frog butt. I got him. He had already lost his tail, not in my care, but he had already lost his tail at the other place where he came from, and I personally loved it. He did unfortunately pass away, but that was of old age because he was an older gecko when I got him. He was already around 12 years old or so when I got him, so, and I had him for about 2 years, so he lived a decent life for a crested gecko. So definitely watch out. Don't be like grabbing your gecko by its tail. You really shouldn't be grabbing any animal by its tail, but definitely not the ones that can just boop, detach it and yeet their tail at you, because that is actually a protection, used for protection. So in the wild, for example, if an animal grabs their tail, they can detach it and the tail will continue wiggling around. So they can go and, like, the animal will be distracted by that and the gecko can get away. But my number one pick for easiest pet reptile to get would be a crestie. I love cresties. Now, sticking with the gecko theme, my number two choice would be a leopard gecko. Now, I personally don't have a leopard gecko currently, and they're not really my favorite species to keep. I don't know why, because they're really, really freaking adorable, and they have great personalities. They're very friendly, very handleable. They are, I'm not really sure why I'm not a huge leopard gecko fan, but I do like them. Just, I don't keep one right now, or ever. I don't know, but they are also a very easy species to keep. They do require a bigger enclosure, so you could keep a baby in, say, a 10-gallon, and when they get older, you would want to at least have a 20-gallon long enclosure. You can keep them on paper towel, tiles. You can keep them on paper towel, tiles, like from a hardware store. You can get tiles cut to fit in there. Or what I do is bioactive. Never use sand. Like the calcium sand, that stuff is horrible. It causes impaction. Don't use calcium sand. But I have never had a problem when I did keep them, and fat-tail geckos, I've never had a problem with keeping them on eco-earth and a bioactive substrate. I keep almost all my animals on bioactives. Actually, I think all of them except my chameleon have bioactive substrate. Highly recommend that, but that is for another video because there is so many different things that go into bioactives. They do require a UV light and a heat light for a basking spot, and your UV light to prevent metabolic bone disease. You do have to dust their crickets with a calcium supplement, such as the Fluker's calcium powder. It's just like a white powder you dust. You can like put your crickets in, like, either in the bag or in like a little cup. That's what I do. Put the powder on there and just kind of shake it up, and then you can give them their crickets. And the same thing with their mealworms, because you can give them a mealworm dish and they will just eat mealworms out of the mealworm dish. They're typically very friendly, easy to handle. As babies, they definitely can be skittish or like bite, but their bites don't like hurt. Like, it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny because they don't hurt. Like, I've literally like had a baby just like latch on and just kind of hold, but it like doesn't hurt. They didn't cut, didn't break skin, nothing. Again, super adorable. They can also lose their tail, but it does grow back. But when it grows back kind of wonky looking. So I don't know. It just does. It grows back. It doesn't look the same as the original tail. But yeah, that is leopard geckos. I think they are really cool. I just personally don't keep any. Next, I'm going to ruin the list with an amphibian, and that would be a Pac-Man frog. Pac-Man frogs are typically super easy to keep. Mine I currently have in a 8x8x8 Exoterra, but that is because she is still super tiny. She's a baby. And once she gets bigger, I'm going to move her into a 10-gallon, which typically is good for a Pac-Man frog, is a 10-gallon enclosure. Lots of substrate because they do like to bury themselves. And you'll just like, basically you have like this enclosure of dirt and plants, and you just see like these little like eyes peeking out, like you just like they peek their little faces out. They're typically super easy. You mist them down twice a day, throw some crickets in there, and your Pac-Man should be good. They don't require special UV lights. They typically do really well at room temperature, and they're like really cute. Like, why would you not want that? It's so cute. And they get like super big. Like as adults, they can get like this. Like they're so cool. I have had multiple. I've only had one pass away on me, and I think it was a baby, and it was like a failure to thrive situation, because with baby animals that does happen. They can just sometimes be a failure to thrive. Like that's just nature. That's why animals have so many, that's why these type of animals have so many babies, is because it's likely to have a failure to thrive. Otherwise, they're really great. You obviously don't really want to handle them all that much, because our skin, unless you have sorry, I had a text message there. You obviously don't want to handle them a whole lot, because our hands have toxins and stuff on it that can get onto their skin. They have very sensitive skin. So you don't really want to be handling your Pac-Man unless you have gloves, or you keep your hands super clean and super like damp so that they don't get it. And your Pac-Man should be good. So I definitely recommend Pac-Mans as a beginner, even though they're not a reptile. And this is a reptile list, but they're an amphibian, and they're still really cool, so get one. And number 4 would be a corn snake. I know, I just made a video talking about how I don't like corn snakes, and I've had no luck with corn snakes until I've got my current girl, which is Luna, but that's a different story. Watch that video. I tell my whole corn snake experience. But the reason why I pick them as a beginner is, again, they are super easy. They don't require special lights. They typically do pretty good at room temperature. Give them a basking spot or a heat pad, and pretty much there you go. They're good to go. You give them appropriate sized. Oh my god, all my notifications keep going off. What do you people want from me? I'm filming. You give them an appropriate size mouse or rat. Typically, corn snakes can stay on mice their whole life, as long as you get like when they're bigger, like the jumbo mice. So typically they can stay on mice their entire life, which is good because it's cheaper than rats. Also, I will sometimes swap mine up though and give them appropriate sized rats as well. If you handle them a lot, they are known to be super handleable and super personable. And yeah, I mean, if you're just starting out with a snake, I would say definitely get one of them over a ball python, which ball pythons are definitely my number 1 favorite snake, but they can be picky. They have higher humidity requirements, and they can go on hunger strikes. Like, I think the longest I've had one go on a hunger strike was like for 4 months. It just like doesn't eat, and it like, if you're new to the game, it can totally freak you out if you're like, why is my corn snake not eating? And you're like freaked out by it. They just do that. So, but you never have to worry about that with a corn snake. Ever. Ball pythons, yes. Corn snakes are amazing eaters, and I don't think one has ever refused a meal in the history of ever. I swear, they're little garbage disposals. They just love to eat. So if you want a decent sized snake that doesn't get too huge and isn't super heavy, like ball pythons have a lot of, like, they're not heavy, but they're more substantial. If you want, and corn snakes stay more long and skinny. So if you want a decent sized snake that's not too big, probably won't scare your family. Super easy to care for. Feed it once a week, an appropriate size mouse. Frozen. I definitely recommend frozen thawed over live, because one, live is kind of cruel, even though it's part of nature. It also poses as a risk for your snake. If the mouse decides to fight back, they can bite them, and snakes have actually died from rat bites before. So I highly recommend, if you can get your snake onto frozen thawed, do that. Yeah, so I mean, I couldn't really think of an easier pet. Feed it once a week, make sure it has a light on, you're good to go. I can't think of anything easier than that. And last but not least, it's another snake. It is a Kenyan sand boa. They are a lot smaller. They stay pretty small. They're very similar in size to the hognose, which I have a hognose. But the reason the hognose didn't make this list is because technically hognose snakes are rear-fanged venomous, and Kenyan sand boas are not. Because they stay smaller, they require a little bit smaller of a enclosure, which I forgot to mention. For a corn snake, I would recommend an adult in a 40-gallon breeder, and a baby can be in anything from a 10 to a 20, depending on as it grows. But typically, a Kenyan sand boa as an adult can be kept as a Kenyan sand boa as a baby can be kept in a 10-gallon as a baby and live its full life as an adult in a 20-gallon. So they stay pretty small. They have the most derpy faces. Like, come on, is that not the cutest thing you've ever seen? They're awesome. They're another pretty easy one once you get them on food. They can be a little picky at first, but once you get them... Sorry, I keep watching Bacon, my hognose. She's, like, out because I'm filming in front of my reptile rack, and she's, like, distracting me. She's, like, right here at the front of her tank, and she's so cute. So I keep getting distracted here. But, where were we? They typically stay pretty small. They're another one that once you get them onto frozen thawed and you get them on a good eating schedule, because they can be a little picky as babies until they get really used to their eating schedule. You can keep them on mice their entire life. They require less space than a bigger snake, obviously, because they're a smaller snake. They are super cute. And as much as their name suggests, they don't live on sand. They actually should have a eco-earth substrate, or aspen. Aspen's good too. I prefer bioactive, so all mine are on an eco-earth bioactive substrate. But, which, if I haven't mentioned, I actually don't own a Kenyan sand boa right now, but I have had one in the past, so I do know about them, and it was a really cool snake. It was actually during an unfortunate amount of time. It was actually during an unfortunate time where I ended up rehoming him, because I had a lot of baby snakes at the same time, and I ended up rehoming the snake, and yeah, I regret that one. That was like my first snake ever, so I do regret getting rid of her. Substrates. Keep them on aspen, or my recommendation is a bioactive substrate, which is like eco-earth and moss and stuff. You can give them a little sand box, which is like literally like a little box that you could put some sand in, and they can like play in there for like enrichment and stuff, but they don't really need it because you don't really want them to ingest the sand. And if you do use sand, do not use the calcium sand from pet stores. Just get plain, clean play sand, and you should be good there. But only do it as like an enrichment thing. Don't fill their whole tank with sand, even though they're called sand boas. They are a more burrowing species, so you are likely to not see them out and about as much, as they will typically burrow down and just have their head sticking out to search for food. So if you want a more like active, out and about, playing in their enclosure, I would say the corn snake. But if you want a smaller, equally easy to care for snake that is also very handleable, go with the Kenyan sand boa. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say. Those are my top 5 picks for the easiest pet reptiles. And that's it for me today, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, bye.